We are here with Chant Caracal. You did a documentary that's quite controversial.
The premise of the documentary is that after Donald Trump posted about South Africa, signed the executive order about South Africa, there was a lot of debates on social media, panel discussions on TV, interviews, all the like. Everyone was talking about Donald Trump. Is he racist? Is he a bad leader? Is he wrong about America? Is he right for America? But nobody wanted to touch this radioactive question.
Yeah.
Is he really right about South Africa? So I thought, well, we need to make a documentary actually attempting to answer that question. So I talked to two major experts. One of them is Martin van Staden of the Free Market Foundation. The reason why we know South Africa has over 142 race laws is because Martin did the research to actually compile the list, the index. And the other expert that I talked to is Theo Jager of SAAI, one of the largest farmers' unions in South Africa, ardent critic of the expropriation bill in South Africa as well. And how I know he is the real deal critic is the fact that after criticizing the expropriation bill, he was edited out of a government photograph, Stalin style. It's one of the most shocking things I've seen in South African politics, and I grew up in South Africa.
We've attended like MK and EFF rallies. We will literally film people singing Kill the Boer to us, like dancing around us. Is that song really so bad? The argument they make, it's sort of a struggle song. Is there real clear causation between that song and actual killing of Boers?
Good question.
One of the biggest criticisms is this number, 142 race-based policies in South Africa. I would almost argue, what does it even matter? If it was 141 or 140,
it's 50 or 20.
Yeah, I mean, but
there is a very long list of race laws on the government books, and that's the important thing. That's the truth about South Africa. The uncomfortable truth is the fact that we are still living under a racialist regime, not a non-racialist government.
When the government introduces a law which allows it to confiscate people's property, regardless of race, so whether you're black, white, Indian or colored, the state can take your stuff and give you nothing.
The real harm that is done by race law after 1994 comes in the form of really a small handful of laws. All of that flows out of the very important 2003 Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act. This single law flows into many other laws, and it has dozens of policies and regulations in terms of it as well. If you as an enterprise want to do business with the South African government or any kind of municipal or provincial government, then you must score high in terms of your BEE points in terms of this act. Now, how do you score high on this thing? You must change your share ownership. It must be more transformed, more black. But then also the Employment Equity Act flows into this. Your workforce must be transformed, and that will give you more BEE points. The reason this is so problematic is that your suppliers must also score highly on BEE for your points to be higher. And this is actually ingenious. It's very, very smart of the racial engineers of modern South Africa, because it's a cascading effect. It's a snowball, whereby you as a small business somewhere, a family business even, you think, well, I don't want to do business with the state. I'm going to employ my son, my cousin, and some people from the local community, and we're just going to do our thing. But the moment you supply a bigger business, which is supplying a bigger business, which is supplying a bigger business that wants to do business with the state, that cascading effect is going to come to you, and someone is eventually going to ask you, what is your BEE score? Otherwise, we can't do business with you. We need to up our score. Through that way, the BEE has basically voluntarily become an aspect of all sectors in the economy. So even if you're the best engineers and builders in the country, you provide the best service for the lowest price, but you do not qualify in terms of the racial thresholds that are set by the regulations in terms of the law, the door is closed to you entirely. Very problematic for a country that has very little infrastructure investment like South Africa. Very problematic for a country where basic services are denied to the vast majority of people who need quality services at an affordable price. The state is pushing those prices up, pushing the quality down in many cases, just so that it can satisfy some racial criteria. In South Africa, you can go nowhere where you are safe from the state's racial engineering imperatives. We are 31 years into this dispensation of race law, the new dispensation of race law, and still we are told that the economy is untransformed, which means it is too white, and yet we've had hundreds of race laws. It has not worked. Now, the conclusion that the government is reaching, that the political class is reaching, that the rent seekers are reaching is, well, we have to do more of it. It hasn't worked, so let's try harder with this model that doesn't work. BEE and employment equity regulations, you distort that market entirely. You create huge uncertainty, especially for international investors who actually have no idea what this is all about and why they should now transform their own management according to South African racial criteria. So you just create economic chaos.
And what would be some extreme examples of that?
One of the most recent or extreme examples would be something like the Tourism Relief Fund. So in 2020, during COVID, the government creates this Tourism Relief Fund to help businesses, family businesses that are struggling in the tourism sector during the COVID lockdowns. There's just one catch though. You can only really qualify for this tourism relief fund if you have the right racial makeup. Your business is owned by the right people, is managed by the right racial bean counting criteria. So if your management of your little small family business is too white, sorry, the government's gonna stand back and watch your business go under, not help you out because you don't meet their racial criteria. That's one of the most shocking examples recently. Another example would be Dis-Chem 2018, one of the largest pharmacy chains in South Africa. The leaked memo written by their CEO says we're putting a moratorium, a total freeze on all hiring and promotion of white people under threat of major government fines.
But to be fair to this guy, wasn't he just following state law?
Well, that's the problem, is he's not doing it because he woke up one morning and said, I want to be known as the most racist CEO in South Africa. He woke up realizing my business is going to be damaged incredibly badly by government fines, so he's being forced. He's being held at metaphorical gunpoint by a race-obsessed maniac in the form of the South African government.
The South African government is currently refusing to grant Elon Musk's Starlink a license to operate in South Africa because SpaceX does not meet the ANC's racial ownership requirements. In 2025, South Africa remains the only Southern African country without Starlink or even a launch date. Even Zimbabwe got Starlink before South Africa. Let that sink in.
I'm just worried that this turns into a white versus black thing. I think perhaps the best way to look at this is not an appropriate thing to sing, but the majority of the people chanting it in this, I don't know how big the crowd is in these EFF rallies, do not really want to kill a white person, I assume.
The kinds of things that happen to people, having their knees drilled, being tied up for hours, having swords thrust down their necks, being raped, being brutalized to death.
How would you explain how this act specifically threatens private property rights in South Africa?
Any tier of government can expropriate here. It's not only our national government. It is also our notoriously corrupt second tier of government, the provincial authorities, the various departments on that level. And then any municipal official can also expropriate. And you know what's the extent of our problems on that level. So why wouldn't a radical politician on the municipal level try to test the boundaries of what he can do? And the problem on our side is the farmer must fight from his own pocket against it, whilst government on all these tiers fight with taxpayers' money. The counter argument is, the first one, they say government will not do it because they are sensitive to investment confidence. Now, if a government would not do it, why do you pass an act like this?
Why do you give yourself power you will definitely not use?
It gives government all these discount clauses, but it does not say how much discount government can take. And our position is, what's wrong with market-related compensation? Why do you want to put the burden for a national imperative on the shoulders of an individual citizen? It is simply not just. And then there's this argument that we need to speed up land reform. For 30 years, we have not made much progress. Now, you see, these land reform programs, all three of them, have been designed for corruption. They've been abused. We have seen the most horrible kinds of corruption in this process. The reason why land reform is not working has nothing to do with the willing seller principle. It has nothing to do with market-related compensation. It has to do with cater deployment, with self-enrichment, with nepotism, and with the kind of inept which you can only imagine. Government sits with about 2.7 million hectares of good farms in its possession at the moment. And by its own account, 90% of it has failed. Why not start there, rectify that, get people on that land who has been prepared and trained and mentored to be profitable beneficiaries of land reform.
When the government introduces a law which allows it to confiscate people's property, regardless of race, so whether you're black, white, Indian or colored, the state can take your stuff and give you nothing. While knowing, of course, that you have lots of race baiting that goes on, in the way that those sort of laws are promulgated and discussed. I think it's going to be used as a weapon against all sorts of ethnic minorities. I think one of the things that people assume is like, well, it'll just be the wise king who gets to do this, Ramaphosa is a trustworthy guy. I'm sure he'll just pick just causes. But you've got 400 expropriating authorities around the country. And once MK starts getting control of municipalities in the next election, in KZN, and they say, that little piece of land looks quite nice, and you're not Zulu, so we don't think you really deserve to live there anymore. We don't really like vendors or Sutus or whatever being here, and it's in the public interest for us to confiscate your land and give us nothing. And if you don't like it, well, you can pay to take us to court. That's kind of a horrifying thing.
Oh, that's fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah, the scope of the law is pretty broad. And one of the problems with it is that it gives examples of when no compensation can be paid. There's not a closed list. So there's huge scope for uncertainty. We have a huge unemployment problem. We have a huge problem with being isolated by America because of all the nefarious things that we're up to. The answer is not go and invest elsewhere. It's we need to make some reforms. Please invest in South Africa, because then we can start uplifting people out of poverty.
Billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk has once again clashed with EFF leader Julius Malema. Recently, Musk has been vocal about South African politics, including expressing his opposition to the Expropriation Act.
Because the mayor of DA in PE is a white man. So these people, when you want to hit them hard, go after a white man. But we are starting with this whiteness. We are cutting the throat of whiteness.
Elon Musk responded to this clip of EFF leader Julius Malema, accusing him of deliberately calling for the genocide of white South Africans. Musk says sanctions should be imposed on Malema, including declaring him an international criminal. In response, Malema told Musk that he's not intimidated by the call for sanctions and will not yield to what he described as a spoiled brat. Malema further emphasized that he will continue advocating for the rights of black people, even if it means falling out of favor with influential figures in the international community. In 2023, Musk also voiced his frustration with Malema for chanting "Kill the Boer" during his party's 10th birthday rally.
To kill the Amazon, kill the poor, the farmer, kill the poor, the farmer.
Musk was upset by the chant, stating that Malema was inciting the genocide of white farmers.
Are you happy with Donald Trump's now laser-like focus on South Africa?
Well, he's one of the first major global leaders to shine a critical light on South Africa under ANC rule. He's exposing the very bad things happening in South Africa. I think it's fantastic and we welcome it.
The president made it clear that Afrikaners in South Africa who are the victims of unjust racial discrimination would be welcome to come to the United States. We're sending a clear message that the United States really rejects the egregious persecution of people on the basis of race in South Africa.
South Africa leadership is coming to see me, I understand, sometime next week. And, we're supposed to have a G20 meeting. I don't know how we can go unless that situation's taken care of. But it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about. But it's a terrible thing that's taking place. And farmers are being killed. They happen to be white. But whether they're white or black makes no difference to me. But white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa. And the newspapers and the media, television media, doesn't even talk about it.
We're also very glad that he's shone a positive light on Afrikaners. I think it's the first time in history the President of America names and mentions Afrikaners in a positive light. That's a historic event, that acknowledgement.
Ramaphosa calling Afrikaners cowards. What do you think is his mindset there, and how do you think this all relates to the entire hate speech issue here in South Africa?
Yeah, I think it's a truly dismal situation that people feel that they are being driven out of the country. And I think they have good reason to feel that they need to seek refuge in another country. Part of it goes to the horrendous nature of farm attacks. During the Kill the Boer litigation, we led evidence from people who had survived these attacks. The trauma of those experiences is so extreme. I mean, the kinds of things that happen to people, having their knees drilled, being tied up for hours, having swords thrust down their necks, being raped, being brutalized to death, often in situations where there's almost no financial reason for it. So sometimes there'll be a theft where a car gets stolen and then abandoned just down the road, or very small amounts of money are taken. In one of the cases, a mother and daughter were so brutally murdered with broken bottles that it was unclear whether the daughter had also been raped, and "Kill the Boer" was written in blood above their bodies. You also have the situation where the ratios of intruder attacks on farms are so different from the rest of what we have in South Africa. So there's a general narrative that South Africa is a crime-ridden place, everybody experiences crime, and just because some white farmers get it in the neck doesn't mean that there's a problem. So the way to understand whether there's a problem is not just to look at raw numbers, it's to look at ratios. So to give you an idea, the general murder rate in South Africa is about 33 out of 100,000, but that's a distortion. So when we think murders, we think that must all be intruder attacks, but actually only about 5 out of the 33 are intruder attacks. A lot of it is social fabric crimes, gang violence, domestic violence. Farm attacks, by definition, are all intruder attacks. And there, the ratio for farmer murders is 100 out of 100,000. So 20 times higher than our intruder attack rate.
There are no killings of farmers or white farmers in South Africa.
There are some who criticize this and say he's turning this, or the Americans are turning this into a white versus black thing, which might be not necessary. Like, for example, it's white genocide. Is that necessary to go that far and turn this into a white versus black thing?
No, when you look at the issues that are being put on the table, these are very simple black and white issues metaphorically, but not racially. So metaphorically, what I mean is black and white in the sense that there's a very clear right and wrong. When it comes to racial discrimination, racially discriminatory policies by the government are wrong in the past, they're wrong in the present. Politicians encouraging farm murders through chants like "kill the Boer, kill the farmer," very easily wrong, should not be tolerated. A chant that the president of South Africa refuses to condemn.
We have a multi-party democracy in South Africa that allows people to express themselves. Political parties adhere to various policies, and in many cases, or in some cases, those policies do not go along with government policy. Our government policy is completely against what he was saying, even in the parliament. And they're a small minority party, which is allowed to exist in terms of our constitution.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
Nobody can take land.
And then when they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No.
Nothing happens to them.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people.
AfriForum wrote a letter to the president urging him after, on Human Rights Day, Julius Malema chanted "kill the Boer, kill the farmer." AfriForum wrote a letter to the president saying, "You need to condemn this chant in no uncertain terms," and the president's spokesperson responded saying, "No, the president will not."
So you denounced that type of language in the video that you saw?
Oh yes, we've always done so. As government, as my own party, we are completely opposed to that. We, in 1955, adopted a document which said South Africa belongs to all who live in it.
But why wouldn't you arrest that man? That man said, "Kill the white farmers, kill the white farmers." And then he danced, and he's dancing, and it's "kill the white farmers." I'm not sure, but I think if somebody got up in Parliament and started saying "kill a certain group of people," he would be arrested very quickly. And that's not a small party. That was a stadium that holds 100,000 people, and I hardly saw an empty seat. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of representation.
I mean, I can't look into President Ramaphosa's heart, but I would say it's because he's more afraid of upsetting the EFF than he is committed to standing with the farmers of this country.
The President of South Africa was unable to defend the Constitution of South Africa to say, this thing that you are accusing him of and saying to us we must arrest him. Firstly, we are a constitutional democracy and we are governed by the rule of law. The judiciary has expressed itself on this matter, including the highest court in the land. If I arrest him for that, then I will be violating the Constitution of South Africa, which I must respect. He failed to do that. He couldn't defend the song as a heritage. He couldn't defend the song as a struggle song. He couldn't explain the song that it doesn't in any means necessarily refer to literal killing of white people. It was used in reference to a white supremacist system of oppression in South Africa. He couldn't do that because he himself never believed in the struggle. Former deputy president of the Youth League who sang this song, sitting there not saying anything. Kumbuzo Chabeni, I was with her in the Youth League. She knows the history of this song. She's sitting there very scared. All of them shaking. The president himself shaking. Only 4 white Afrikaner males were confident. It was Rupert, the 2 golfers, and Steenhuisen. Why do you give Steenhuisen to speak in such a meeting and not give a minister of international relations? That department has been juniorized and is being undermined. And we saw agriculture, a minister being promoted against the Minister of International Relations. Reason being the color of his skin more than anything else. Ramaphosa should have presented the facts. Look, he goes to Oval Office 2 days or a day after they released the crime stats, which means Ramaphosa was sitting there knowing the crime stats in South Africa. He still doesn't say, but this is not a true reflection. Mkhumbuzo Ntshavheni was there. She's got all the intelligence information they required to say there are no mass graves of white people. There is no genocide.
I think all reasonable actors in South Africa say there is no white genocide, but that doesn't mean there isn't a problem with people being attacked on the grounds of their race in these brutal ways. And the kinds of recommendations that are being made on this front are actually all very reasonable. Saying, okay, look, we have priority crimes for other things like copper cable theft or rhino poaching. Quite difficult to police rural attacks because of the scale of the farms.
Yeah.
So you should make them priority crimes. You should allow for something like the commando system to come back. You should allow communities to be able to look after themselves. These are not radical things. So instead what you have is someone like Ramaphosa saying there are no farm murders of white people, so the denial. And then when people say, well, we're not protected by the courts, Kill the Boer case is run, it's run in 3 courts really, and the Equality Court, the court finds that the meaning of Kill the Boer is actually a protest song by the EFF against the ANC government for their failures in land reform. A poll was recently done to find out what most South Africans thought, and a variety of different views was put forward. That one ranked last.
Yeah, I think also the Social Research Foundation did a poll on EFF voters, and like 90% said.
Yes, yeah, even among EFF voters, a lot of them sort of distanced themselves from the song or saw it as a sincere attack. So the Supreme Court of Appeal sort of also had an unusual take on what the song meant, and the Constitutional Court refused to even hear it.
You are not ruling out that in the future you may very well call for the slaughter of white people.
It may not be me.
Could it be you?
It could be me, yes, but it may not be me.
Yeah, so it could be you. You could, at some future date, call for the slaughter of white people.
What will necessitate?
You tell me.
I don't know. Why would I do that?
You said you could do it in the future, is that correct?
I can't guarantee that I can't do it or I won't do it.
So right now,
so I'm not ruling out that possibility.
If I asked you to pledge to say, I will never call for the slaughter of white people, would you make that pledge?
I will do it with ease.
Make that pledge.
Why would I do that?
I'm asking you to make that pledge. You said I will do it.
I won't do it.
Make the pledge.
I won't do it.
You won't do it?
Yes.
Listen.
You did a very interesting cross-examination of Mr. Malema. Do you want to talk about that? What was behind the scenes? What was your thought process there?
You'll hear a couple of things that are interesting about this case. It's now finally been concluded. For a long time I haven't been able to speak about it in enough detail, so I'll tell you some things that are kind of not really well known.
For any interesting projects, you guys working with?
Well, I'm still riding the buzz of Elon Musk retweeting and reposting the documentary today. That was a fantastic development. I think it's already at 10 million views as of the last time I checked. Future projects, well, we're just going to keep increasing the amount of AfriForum branches out there, the amount of state-proof solutions, and to become more resilient as communities in South Africa, creating larger and larger spheres of order in a desert of disorder, as Professor Koos Malan puts it.